Yeah, let's do this. How one game ended Sega's console legacy.
Today, you've got slim pickings when it comes to gaming consoles.
Yeah, you buy a Steam Deck.
PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo. Pick one, like a starter Pokemon, and be on your way. But it wasn't always like this. There used to be tons of consoles to choose from. Atari, Namco, Bandai, and one company that used to be...
Don't forget about the Russian NES, or the Chinese NES.
Among the top brass was Sega.
Sega!
In the late 80s and early 90s, the Sega Genesis was competing against the Super Nintendo for the title of the most popular console in the world. They had their own catalog of games, an ad campaign that painted Nintendo as a bunch of squares, and it looked like they were poised to become the favorite console, at least in North America. So, when it came time to release a new generation of consoles in the mid-90s, Sega made it their goal to blow Nintendo out of the water. Enter the Sega Saturn, a $399 home Nintendo out of the water. Enter the Sega Saturn, a
Sorry, I thought you said 500. Sorry, I thought I heard 500. That would have been much worse. Brodie, Genesis or SNES? I never had either. My first console was a PS2. I've played older stuff, but my first home console was a PS2.
$99 home console that was capable of competing with arcade-level graphics.
Whoa.
Unfortunately, released in 1994, the hardware was a little bit too good, and the price tag of $399 scared most people away.
What were the consoles at the time?
Adding insult to injury, the Sony PlayStation released in 1995,
There you go.
a full $100 cheaper, and the Nintendo 64 released in 1996, causing the Saturn to be a huge financial flop for Sega.
Right.
With their backs against the wall, Sega had one last chance to turn their fortunes around, and turn to a man they believed could save the company,
Surely.
a Japanese game creator named Yu Suzuki. Nicknamed the Shigeru Miyamoto of Sega,
Whenever someone is the I am the of other thing, you know it's gonna go well. You know it's gonna be a great experience.
Yu was one of those true visionaries that comes around once in a generation. He was an auteur, an engineer, and kind of a mystic all rolled into one.
Okay.
His most popular game up until that point, Virtua Fighter, is seen by many as the first game to use 3D polygonal people, and his reputation for creating greatness was virtually unmatched.
Okay,
so,
fair enough.
needing something special to get their company back on track, Sega reached out to Yu and offered him carte blanche to give him whatever resources he needed to build the game of his dreams. But Yu's approach to game making was a little bit different. In a world where video games were about clearing levels, setting high scores, or beating the person next to you, Yu wasn't satisfied with just making another game. He wanted to create an experience, one that reflected real life in Japan. From the get-go, he made it clear that his goal was to make a game that would transcend genre.
One thing I kind of love is at this point, fucking Ryuga Gotoku are the developers of Virtua Fighter. The fucking Yakuza devs are the ones who like have the development rights. Obviously, they're part of that whole like Sega brand, but that's the studio that is in charge of making fucking Virtua Fighter.
A game that was free, in his own words. Originally, he wanted to make a fighting game that followed around Akira Yuki from Virtua Fighter, but the fighting game genre was kind of limiting. So, he settled on an RPG instead, tasking Sega with creating a bespoke game engine for him to realize his dreams, and then went on to hire a diverse team of musicians, writers, and technical staff, which would eventually grow to a team of 300 people. But the first step in Yu's process wasn't what you'd expect from a game maker. It was to simply listen to music. That's it. Sit around, listen to classical music, and get the vibe of the game. With that out of the way, it was time to start creating the world of Shenmue. One of the things Yu was passionate about was 3D models that reflected real life. His work on Virtua Fighter meant he had a lot of experience on the subject, and he was ready to take 3D character models to the next level. At the time, this was the bar
We're watching a video about Sega fucking dying
for 3D rendered faces, and Yu was dead set on raising that bar exponentially. He started by tasking his artists with creating 2D drawings, then they hired a sculptor to come in and build the models out of clay, then Yu used motion capture technology to model the movements and facial expressions of real people.
That's actually fucking crazy for the time.
Was something completely mind-blowing in 1999. This level of detail was unheard of in game making, and it was implied throughout the entire game. Every character had 3D modeled faces. You could open any drawer, pick up almost any item and look at it. You had the team spend an inordinate amount of time designing several different doors to ensure that buildings felt authentic to what they were like in Japan. They even went as far as creating backstories for every single NPC in the game.
Itoi-san.
Since we're here, he's not gonna play it, so I'm gonna play it, just because it's funny.
Itoi-san, how do you know about the three blades?
Years ago, I was Chinese.
That's all you need to know about the game.
Including information like age, name, weight, blood type, nationality, how old their wife is, what company they work at, how many days they get off per week. There's so many tiny features in this game that even diehard fans are still discovering new quirks. Unfortunately, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows working for Yu Suzuki. Many employees described coming into work, sitting down for an unplanned meeting, and learning about some brand new idea he had that needed to be in the game. One day it was a gachapon machine stocked with toys from Sonic and Virtua Fighter. Next, he'd ask you to program 365 days of weather, accurately reflecting meteorological Fighter. Next, he'd ask you to program 365 days of weather, accurately reflecting meteorological records from Yokosuka in 1986.
Oh.
Then, he'd want Ryu to be able to chug a can of Coke. Any of these things would take an incredibly long time to implement, and the scope creep was difficult to manage. Despite a staff of more than 300, the team lacked modern tools for tracking bugs and tasks. Developers would often sleep at the office trying to get bits of the game finished on time, and there was quite a bit of friction between the grand vision Ryu wanted to realize and the people below him who were responsible for making it happen. That being said, if Shenmue was going to be good enough to save SEGA, maybe that's the kind of visionary thinking they needed. When development for Shenmue began in 1996, it was originally slated to release on the Sega Saturn. However, due to the Saturn's poor sales, Sega turned their hopes to a new generation of console, the Dreamcast. They wanted Shenmue to be a console seller, a reason for gamers to throw Mario 64 and Final Fantasy to the wayside and pick up their console.
This was an era where that was not gonna happen. This was during, like, the peak of Final Fantasy. No shot. And Nintendo, they've had a stranglehold since consoles. Like, until, like, Final Fantasy was a console seller up until 10. Like, you were not gonna fight Final Fantasy at this time.
Instead. At first, it seemed like their ploy was working. When magazines started publishing pictures of Shenmue, the graphics were so realistic, people mistook the screenshots for concept art. When they realized the images were rendered in-game, their minds were blown. No one could believe graphics like these could be rendered in real time, let alone on a home console. But these kind of graphics came at a very real cost. It's estimated that Sega sunk upward of $47 million to develop Shenmue, a total that comes out to nearly $100 million today.
Not a crazy expensive game today, but like that's still a big investment for it to not do great.
Adjusting for inflation. Even if Shenmue could move consoles like they wanted, it was going to take a lot of sales for them to recoup their money.
I actually haven't played the game. That could be fun at some point.
Sadly, Sega was dropping the ball, and other factors were putting them in a position to fail before they'd even started. For example, Electronic Arts wanted exclusive rights to sports games on the Dreamcast.
Of course they did.
But Sega CEO Bernie Stolar said no. He wanted to make his own sports games. In response, EA pulled all of their titles from the Dreamcast, seriously weakening their position since Madden was one of the biggest games in the world at the time. Seeing Sega in trouble, Sony decided to really mess with Sega, announcing the PlayStation 2 around the same time that the Dreamcast released. Seeing the PlayStation 2 right around the corner, a console that would have EA titles, most gamers simply chose to wait it out. Yeah, the Dreamcast is cool.
Yeah, what year was the Dreamcast? Dreamcast was 99. What year was Final Fantasy X? Because, yeah, Shenmue was, like, really impressive looking. 2001. Yeah, it was an impressive looking game. And then FF10 comes out. FF10, in many ways, still holds up today.
But the PlayStation 2 is going to be even cooler. With this kind of environment, regardless of how good Shenmue actually was, it would take a miracle for it to sell the Dreamcast in any meaningful way. But there was still hope. Shenmue finally released on December 29th, 1999.
Wow.
Yu Suzuki's vision of creating an experience truly came together in the final product. It had everything. Hyper-realistic 3D models, rooms you could enter, and cupboards you could rummage through. It had forklift racing.
Forklifts!
Yeah, there's nothing
I
quite
forgot about the forklifts.
like heading down to the docks with your boys and ripping around on some heavy machinery. But to many who are used to playing, games, Shenmue was a little bit too out there. The core
Yeah. So we were starting to, like, Final Fantasy had been a thing already. Dragon Quest already existed. But most games, like, the idea of a story game was still a relatively new concept, right? Nowadays, every game is a story game. But back then, you'd, like, a handful of franchises that were like that. Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy. Dragon Quest wasn't even that popular in the West. So mainly Final Fantasy. What other story-focused series were there at the time? Because remember, this is even pre, like, a lot of the mascot platformer stuff. Mario, shut up. No, Mario has like a 10-second cutscene and then no more story for the rest of the game. Star Ocean. Yeah, it was mainly JRPGs, wasn't it? Yeah, it was mostly Japanese titles. You didn't really have much of that from the West. So something like this was just, especially with Sega being bigger in the West, this was a very, very bold concept at the time.
core gameplay loop was walking around Yokosuka asking people questions. Often, you'd have to catch them at a certain time of day, and you might be forced to wait for hours in-game, as Shenmue had no feature to skip time forward. Usually, after spending the whole morning standing around, you'd finally get a chance to talk to the person you'd been looking
Shadow of the Colossus? No, what year was that? That was a PS2 title. I feel like it was a late PS2 title, wasn't it? Or was it early? 2005. So same year as Yakuza 1.
for, only for them to stare at you blankly and say, I don't know. And that's not even mentioning the English dub for the game, which is infamous.
But Itoi's
Oh, he did the thing! I didn't think it was gonna happen!
son, how do you know about the three blades?
Years ago, I was Chinese.
I didn't think it was gonna happen. Drakengard was 2003. Let's see if we can find some other stuff. Shenmue and dub funny. Years ago, I was Chinese. Oh, and this is the second game.
Hey, what's wrong? Hey, what's wrong?
I'm scared.
Me? Well... Wait, I won't do anything.
Really?
You have my word.
You're still mad.
Me? Well...
Let's find another one. What's this?
Got a minute?
Huh? Get out of my space, schoolboy!
Excuse me.
Huh? Who the hell you think you are?
Excuse me.
Oh, no, no, no. I just can't now.
This weird coat.
What kind of coat?
It was a deep green.
So anyway, darn cold today, isn't it?
True.
There is a lot of fake stuff circulating these days, but...
Is every single Wait, sorry. Does every NPC have a unique voice actor?
we only stock the real thing.
Do you know of any places where sailors hang out?
I don't imagine they'd be here. Probably the red light district, eh?
I'm trying to find some sailors.
Sailors? I see lots of them in the evenings.
Do you know about the three blades?
Who told you about that, son?
Nowadays, soccer is hip.
Wow.
Having a drink with your father.
Man, I'm sure there is a fan translation to play the Japanese version. However, I think we have to play with the dub. I think we have to.
But despite being somewhat clunky, Shenmue was still a great success on paper, selling 1.18
Oh
million
god, why is the camera so wobbly?
copies and becoming the 4th most popular game on the Sega Dreamcast. Unfortunately, by the time the game was released heading into the year 2000, Sega had only sold 5.2 million units of the Dreamcast. Doing some quick math, Shenmue cost $47 million to make, games were selling for $50 each, 5.2 million Dreamcast sold in 2000. In order for Shenmue to break even, every Dreamcast owner would have had to buy the game 4 times. It was a mathematical impossibility that Shenmue would break even, let alone save Sega. Yu Suzuki spent years creating this incredible masterpiece, only for it to be released on a console that no one was buying. And less than a year later,
If this game released on the PS2, I'm actually so curious what would have happened if it released on the PS2. Right? Like, this probably... I wouldn't be surprised if this... Considering how much it sold on the Dreamcast, this may have ended up being like one of the... Did it release on the Xbox? Yeah, but wouldn't that have been later? Like, it did release on other things afterwards. (2002). Yeah, the Xbox version came in 2002. But if it released on the PS2 originally, this probably would have been a very different... They were making a PS2 port and they scrapped it. You scrapped the port to the biggest console for like the next 10 years. Incredible. Amazing. Good job, guys.
Sega announced that the Dreamcast would be their final console. Although this was the end of Sega as a major player in the console wars, it wasn't the end for Shenmue. A sequel released in 2001 as one last hurrah for the Dreamcast before it was discontinued. Shenmue 2 turned out to be a huge improvement from the first game. NPCs would actually lead you to locations, you could skip time forward, there was a mini-map, and the game ended on one of the great cliffhangers in gaming, one that would leave players hanging for 18 long years. For almost 2 decades, fans thought Shenmue 2 was the end of the series. But in 2015, a little thing called Kickstarter changed all that. After raising more than $6.3 million, Yu Suzuki got to work on Shenmue 3. If not for himself, then to do right by...
It's actually kind of interesting to me that they, like, just let the IP move over to him. Check the link for why it was scrapped. GPU problems, shader problems. Why wasn't it released? I think it was due to rights, not technical issues. See, it was tied up with real companies like Timex watches and Coca-Cola drinks. That contract was only for the Dreamcast. Oh, that's gross. Oh, that's actually so gross. It's because of fucking licensing of real objects.
All of the fans who wanted one more Shenmue. The game finally released in 2019, and although it was a little old school, described by Martin Robertson in Eurogamer as completely ignorant of modern trends in open world gaming, or indeed trends of the last 20 years, hardcore Shenmue fans didn't mind. They were just excited to get back and live in the world of Shenmue one last time. Today, Shenmue remains a legend. It topped BAFTA's list of the most influential games of all time. It has perhaps one of the most avid, voracious, committed fandoms in all of gaming. The 3D graphics were groundbreaking at the time and still look pretty good even today. The effort put into every little detail was unparalleled, and although it wasn't the commercial success Sega needed it to be, Yu Suzuki did fulfill what he set out to create. An experience. A little piece of Japan frozen in time. A piece of art that really does make you feel free.
Hope I play it one day. I'd be game to play it. You know, there's lots of series that I've been meaning to play for a long time, like, you know, Metal Gear Solid. lots of fun things I need to get around to at some point when I eventually decide to do so. That was a good video. That was a good video. I don't think I've seen this guy's stuff before.